Welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Kate. I'm the Community Engagement and Events Coordinator for the Illawarra Health and Medical Research Institute, better known as IHMRI. And welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be talking about women in research and our incredible clinical trials that we have at IHMRI. We're delighted to have you with us today. Thanks so much for joining us, and a huge thanks also to our panelists, who I will introduce in just a moment. For those of you who aren't familiar with IHMRI, we are a not-for-profit charity that supports health and medical research in the Illawarra Shoalhaven region. We provide our researchers with a range of services to help them find new insights into diseases and illnesses, to prevent new devices, to devise new prevention strategies, and to develop more effective treatments and healthcare services. Our role also is to connect clinicians from the Illawarra Shoalhaven Local Health District, and of course researchers to advance health and medical research and to translate this to clinical practice for ultimately better health outcomes for our community. If you would like to know a little bit more about IHMRI and who we are, I encourage you to go to our website, ihmri.org.au, for more information. So great, we've got a good number of people. Welcome to everyone who has joined. Just a couple of housekeeping items. I wonder if a couple of you could just mention in the chat function whether you can hear me okay. Just type that in. Oh, wonderful. Thanks, Diane, Teresa, Penny, Laura, thank you so much. If you do have any comments as the webinar progresses, please feel free to pop this in the chat panel here. We love people to be able to share their experiences if they'd like to. If you have any questions, there's also a Q&A function. I encourage you to pop any questions that you have in there, and then towards the end of the webinar, we'll be tackling those questions, and I'll be fielding those out to our panelists. So, March brings us International Women's Day. It's a day celebrating the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women, and it calls on people to raise awareness of women's equality and celebrate achievements, and that's what we're going to be doing today. At IHMRI, we have some incredible researchers, and I thought this might be a really lovely opportunity to give a platform to our emerging researchers to share what they're doing, in particular in the clinical trial space. So we're absolutely delighted to have our panel with us. We have Beck Veering, we have Brooke Russell, we have Jordan Stanford and Asmahan Elgellaie. So I'm going to pass over to them and let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about who they are. So Asmahan, shall we start with you?
Absolutely, Kate. Thank you so much. So hi everyone. I am Asmahan Elgellaie, 31 years old. A mother of 2 little girls who are keeping me very busy, as you can imagine. I was born and raised in Libya till I finished my high school. I graduated high school, and I was among the top 10 students in the country. And the prize was a scholarship to literally study anywhere overseas, and which was a dream came true. And of course, I have picked the country that I know nothing about, which is Australia. Back then, the only thing I knew about Australia is that it is a faraway place with lots of trees and jumping kangaroos. So that was in 2010, 11 years ago, I moved to Australia, a beautiful place with beautiful people. Of course, I've met a lot of challenges, you know, being in a different culture, completely different language, and also the fact that I was feeling homesick and being away from family, and also the fact that I couldn't travel to visit them because unfortunately a war has started back then in Libya, which made it difficult and unsafe to travel and visit them. So that, I would say, affected me a lot. and it's been a tough couple of years, but I kept pushing myself and kept having faith. And here I am now working as academic tutor in the medical school, teaching anatomy, and also doing my PhD in School of Medicine with two amazing supervisors, Teresa Larkin, which is with us today, and Sue Thomas. And in our current research, my PhD research, we are looking at people with depression to understand why people with depression are at higher risk of cardiometabolic diseases by looking at the interactions between their psychological symptoms with specific hormones, inflammation markers, or biometric measures like blood pressure, body weight, heart rate. So the aim is to hopefully highlight the physiological changes that comes with depression, which could increase the risk of cardiovascular diseases and metabolic syndrome. And hopefully by that, there would be better treatments or preventions. So for me personally, I've chosen research because I'm always passionate about science and finding answers to scientific dilemmas and learn this problem solving skill. And of course, with that, hopefully to help the community. So with my current research, I have had personal contact with participants during data collection appointments. So with this, I think I'm showing members of the general public and other students the importance of research, that there are still a lot of unknowns in terms of health research, and that all of us can be empowered to take ownership by increasing our knowledge, talking to others, and finding out what's happening in the community, for example. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Asmahan. Gosh, so looking at the theme for International Women's Day this year, it's all around choose to challenge. It sounds like you've overcome a whole numerous different challenges to be where you are today. Well done and congratulations.
Thank you.
Beck Veering, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name's Beck. I'm a nutritionist and dietitian. I graduated about 3 years ago, and I sort of fell into research. It wasn't ever in my plan after I graduated, but I got offered a PhD position, and it was sort of too hard to refuse. So I'm doing a worldwide study, and it involves 4 universities at different latitudes around the world. So it involves the University of Wollongong, the University of Surrey in the United Kingdom, the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil, and the North Carolina State University in America. So those are the 4 study sites in my PhD, and I'm involved with the University of Wollongong and the University of Surrey. So I spent my first year over in the United Kingdom, and now I'm back in Australia. And what we're looking at is the vitamin D status of women worldwide. And we're looking at things like where you live in the world, your sun exposure, your diet, and lifestyle factors on vitamin D.
Hey, thank you, Beck. I imagine the climate, of course, is very different in Surrey. To hear it wasn't too rainy for you when you were over in England?
Well, it was, but
it's a silly question, really.
It was. It's very different to here. Yeah, for sure.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Beck. Over to you, Brooke. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yep, sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Brooke. I'm an accredited exercise physiologist. I also lecture in exercise physiology for the University of Wollongong. I used to be a primary school teacher, and I have 2 young children that also keep me very busy. I previously worked for Diabetes Australia, New South Wales for about 15 years as an exercise physiologist, where we delivered community-based exercise. Dietitian worked with me as well as a diabetes educator, and we looked at holistic care for people in the community who were living with or caring for people with type 2 diabetes specifically. I've also worked with children who have type 1 diabetes, which is very rewarding. We ran kids camps for them. And I guess my jump into research was because one of the common questions that I had as a clinician was, when should I exercise? What time of the day is best for me living with type 2 diabetes? To which I never had a solid answer. And that frustrated me because these people came to us for advice and help to manage their diabetes, and we couldn't give them the answers that they wanted. So my research is mostly involved with looking at what time of the day is best to exercise for somebody who has diabetes, but it's based on an individual's blood glucose levels. So we're looking at a person's blood glucose levels over a 2-week period and working out that the time of day that is best for them to exercise, so that hopefully we can develop an easy or simple way to prescribe exercise that's going to have the biggest bang for their buck per se. So I guess my passion is actually taking what we learn in the lab and transferring it to the community so that it has real change for the person who's living with diabetes.
Really interesting, Brooke. And so do you feel like you're a little bit closer to answering that question?
Well, we're in the throes of trying to work that out at the moment.
Yeah.
I think we've got a ways to go, and then we'll also have a way to go once we've got all of the information to make any changes, because ideally it would be great to change the physical activity recommendations and come up with a strategy for GPs or exercise physiologists in the community to be able to prescribe exercise in a simple way, that because people don't have a great deal of time, so if they know that they're going to be exercising at the time that's going to have the greatest impact for them personally, then are they more likely to do it? It's about raising the awareness, I guess, of the importance of exercise in the management of chronic disease, because typically exercise is the first thing that gets thrown out the door when things start to get a bit busy or tough. So we need to make sure that everyone knows it's very important.
I think we can all relate to that in one way or another, but particularly important for those people with type 2 diabetes. Yeah, lovely. Thanks so much, Brooke. And finally, Jordan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Kate. So my name is Jordan Stanford, and like Beck, I am a nutritionist and accredited practicing dietitian, and currently finalising, hopefully, my PhD and doctorate degree at the University of Wollongong. So I guess what led me to research similar to Beck, it wasn't really always a part of the plan. I guess science and research enabled me to bring my love for food and interest in health all together, I guess, which kind of led me in the path of being a nutritionist and dietitian. And I've always had an intensely curious mindset, I guess, about how things work. I like problem solving. I like making things better, if you like. So I guess a clear path was always in kind of nutrition or diet-based research. So my current research and within our team is looking at the role of diet and nutrition on the gastrointestinal microbiota, which I'll explain. It's a bit of a sciencey, funny word, and its relationship with disease, particularly chronic kidney disease. So those individuals in the community that are suffering from kidney disease. So the gut microbiota, which maybe some of you have heard termed as gut health or gut microbiome, is just really a sciencey way of describing or referring to the community of bugs that, including bacteria, that call our gut or intestinal tract home. And I guess this powerful community of bugs actually provide us with thousands of functions beyond what we're capable of doing ourselves. So it's almost a forgotten organ, termed a forgotten organ. So for instance, they can help us digest food, make vitamins like vitamin K. They can communicate with our brain. they also fight off threats, including the viruses that have caused COVID-19, which is very relevant in this kind of landscape. And I guess the reason why there's so much excitement about this topic and why I kind of was really attracted to it is that unlike our genetic makeup or our DNA, where, you know, if you do have, unfortunately, a genetic deficit, you are stuck with that deficit for the rest of your life. Whereas our microbiome can be completely changed with how we treat it. So including diet and lifestyle factors like Brooke just mentioned, like exercise. So we also know, I guess, the link between the microbiome or the gut microbiota and kidney disease, is that people with chronic kidney disease have a less healthy gut microbiome, which are thought to, these bugs are thought to produce these toxins that can actually attack the kidney and further the disease progression, and also attack the heart, which is a common issue with those that living with the disease. So my research is really looking at the role of diet and how we can, I guess, because we share the food that we eat is shared between the bugs that live in our intestinal tract. So how can we change not only who's there, but what they're doing and how that can influence the health of people living with this condition. So, yeah.
Great, thanks so much, Jordan. Okay, so I think just in light of this month hosting International Women's Day, which was earlier this month, we have a question here. What women support and inspire you, or have supported and inspired you on your career path? Asmahan, I think I might throw that to you first.
Yes, so for me, I would say my mom. Can I also please greet her? She's with us live, even though it's past 3 a.m. and their time now. My dad and my sister Aisha are with us live as well. They persisted to disturb their sleep and wake up in the middle of the night to be with us and support me. Mama, Baba, Ayush, and Stuna. So yeah, so as I said, my mom, I would say, is my biggest support. As you can see, despite her being on the other side of the world, she's always there for me. She taught me to never give up and always have faith in God and myself, and chase my dreams and make them true. And for inspiration, I would say my daughters, they inspire me to keep going and always working on myself as a person to be better and better, just so I can be a good role model to them when they get older and they become women themselves. And also I'd like to mention my supervisor, Teresa. I've known her for about 7 years now. She is a big inspiration to me. She is a hardworking individual and I just love her positivity. She always encouraging me, supporting me. Whenever I feel like, losing my confidence or feel like I'm down at myself, she's always there. And I see her not just as a supervisor, she's also a good friend to me. And what a chance, she's also my neighbor. So it's like God has put her in my life for many purposes. Of course, my other supervisor as well, Sue Thomas. She's also a mother herself and a very hardworking individual. And she's always happy to help and support when I need it. So I would say I'm really blessed and happy that I am surrounded with great hardworking women that inspire me and support me.
Oh, that is wonderful, Asmahan. Thank you for sharing that, and welcome to your family dialing in from the other side of the world. We're very happy to have you dialing in today, and of course to your supervisors.
Thank you.
Jordan, can I throw that over to you to answer to?
Yes, I feel a bit inferior though to Asmahan. That was a great summary of what inspires you. So I guess I will probably start with some trailblazers for a different tone. I was actually watching Netflix, On the Basis of Sex. I don't know if anyone's seen that movie, but Ruth Ginsburg, who is most known for her work to support women's rights, her advocacy in gender equality, really inspired me. So now I read a lot about her. I guess another trailblazer is Sheryl Sandberg. If anyone don't know her, she is the COO of Facebook, and she's done a lot of TED Talks and books on how women unintentionally can hold themselves back in their careers. And she really talks about strategies to encourage women to sit at the table, if you like, seek challenges, take risks, and pursue goals. So one of her books, I think, is Lean In, and it's one that I would recommend. In terms of my personal journey, I don't think it would be fair to name just one woman, because I'm surrounded by amazing people. I guess I'm very grateful to have grown up with a family that said I couldn't do a particular task because I was a girl or a female. I guess that, to give context, my family, like my mum and dad, actually separated when I was about 6 years old. So I guess those stereotypical or norm constructs in the family environment weren't really established. My mum was very much the handyman, used to mow the lawn, still do all the kind of female gender roles. And similar to my dad, I remember my good girlfriend came after school and saw my dad dusting and ironing, and she just could not believe it. So I guess, there was no such thing as anything. You could do whatever you want, regardless if you are a girl or a boy in our family. So it was always very grateful.
Such an important message, isn't it? Nowadays, anyone can do anything. That includes being a researcher or taking care of the household chores. Gender shouldn't and shouldn't come into it at all. So yeah, that's a great message. Thank you both. So talking about gender stereotypes, perhaps Brooke, this question for you. Have you ever experienced any instances where, because you're a woman, or have you experienced any kind of I guess challenges or barriers because of your gender in your career to date?
I'd have to say that any challenges or barriers that I've experienced in terms of workplace inequality would be more directed toward an age-specific challenge, where if you're fresh out of university, or you're young or not as experienced as a male or a female colleague, sometimes you are not taken as seriously. So that was definitely a challenge for me when I first graduated and went into the field of exercise physiology. I would say that in my experience, fortunately, I've worked with some really great male colleagues who have supported my development rather than hindered it. One particular example, working with chronic disease, lots of the time we work with people over the age of 65, and typically I know, certainly with my parents and their parents, that they saw people in authority positions such as GPs, etc., being male and older. And so being female and younger, I wasn't necessarily taken seriously or given the time of day. And I actually had a male colleague who I'm still very good friends with today, who advocated for me to this particular person who was of an older generation and would not ordinarily have listened to what I was going to say. So I guess I had a couple of things that weren't on my side, in that I was female, I was young, and I also was talking about exercise, which wasn't right up there with what people wanted to hear about. So it was really lovely to experience that male colleague advocating for me. So I probably haven't had a huge instance with not being accepted or having inequality in terms of my work life. I suppose since becoming a mother, I've experienced some inequalities in terms of no one has necessarily made it an unequal environment, but it just those are challenges that I've had to deal with in terms of being able to manage or balance being a mother with work and my responsibilities and roles at home and things like that. So I guess that is gender-based. And my husband is the breadwinner, so you know, if things go wrong, then I'm usually the one that is the one that has to go and deal with those. And it's not really because I'm a female, I guess, but I'm a mother. So those would be the only, but I've been really lucky. Everybody's always been really supportive of me, thankfully. So
that's great to hear. That's great to hear. Jordan, did you want to expand on that at all? Are you able to share any experiences that you may have had?
Yeah, I think very much like Brooke, I'm very grateful I have, which should actually be celebrated. I've had lots of experiences and support from my colleagues, both women but also men, very much so. I guess probably some examples I can draw on, although they're very few, which I'm thankful to say, was probably working as a dietitian in a clinical setting, so a hospital setting. So dietetics is very much a female-dominated kind of field, even though we are getting more males, which is great to see. It is very much probably more females. But at certain environments in certain hospitals, from some multidisciplinary team members, like a medical doctor once have, you know, kind of expressed or communicated in a way that my value as a dietitian is more of a glorified waitress or cook, and limited to that as my value as a dietitian in that kind of setting, even though we are very much more than just a waitress, if you like. So I guess sometimes I have had those kinds of instances, but whether it be in other areas like public health or even in my research role, I have never ever been felt like I'm not smart enough or shouldn't be here or don't deserve to be here. I've been very well supported by my male and female colleagues, which is really nice.
That's really heartening to hear, because I know in the media all we hear are, you know, the negative stories, and I know that's what makes the news, but it's really heartening to hear that no one has actually experienced any inequality based on their gender to date. So let's hope that continues and that change is coming. Thank you so much, both of you. So IHMRI's mission is, as I said earlier, is to bring our scientists, the researchers, doctors, health professionals together to solve our greatest health challenges through research. Brooke, could you describe a challenge in your life that you have had to overcome?
Yeah, sure. I suppose similar to my answer to the previous question, my biggest challenge that I've had to overcome, and I don't really like using the word challenge because I don't see my children as being a challenge, but recently my eldest started kindergarten, and the amount of time and nurturing that they require to make sure that that transition is a happy one for them. Really, the school drop off and reduced working hours for me because of the time, like school times being 9 to 3 is just totally unworkable for people who are in full-time positions, or, you know, who have participants to see at 7 o'clock in the morning, and being able to negotiate those times and kind of work out how you're going to manage work life and home life, be good at your job and be able to be reliable, but also be a good mum and have time for your children so that they understand that life isn't all about work. It should be about family, because that's the most important thing. And I suppose for me, the way that I've been able to not necessarily overcome that challenge, because I think it will be a continuing challenge, because whilst, you know, little kids have small problems, big kids have big problems. So I'm sure that it'll just change. I am so lucky to have an extremely supportive husband, and we work really well together as a team to make sure that you know, our life is organized down to the last second. And then we also have time as a family on the weekend where we make time to just put our phones and laptops away and make it all about the kids. And I think that's really important because it shows our children that, you know, being happy and healthy is just as important as bringing money in so that you can put food on the table and so on.
Yeah.
I think being extremely organized has helped me overcome those challenges that are presented with that. Some people think that my children are routined down to the second, but if they weren't, then our life would fall apart, literally. And also having a team of people that I work with who are also supportive and don't ever judge me when I ring up and say, I'm sorry, but you know, Charlie is ill today and I can't come in. I think being open and honest about the fact that you do have those responsibilities and that things could change from day to day, and especially with the participants that are joining our study, I'd be open and honest with them so that they're invested in your well-being as well as you being invested in theirs. So you build a rapport with those people so that they really want you to be able to do a good job for them. So I think that's really important in terms of overcoming any challenge. If you give a little bit of yourself, then they're more likely to, or if you give a person an opportunity to care about your situation, then usually they will.
Yeah, I think that's, I think we can all relate to that in areas of life and in work, especially having a supportive team around you is super important. That's great to hear, Brooke. Thank you. So back to International Women's Day. I know we're a little bit late with this webinar. It should really have come earlier on in the month, but I wonder, Beck, can you tell us a little bit about what International Women's Day means to you?
I think International Women's Day is a really important day to celebrate women and what they can do and the achievements they've made. But I also think it's a really important day to highlight the inequalities that women face. So, for example, just the stories that have been told by some of the other women here today, and challenges they face in life and in the workplace. But also, for example, the 14% pay gap that still exists in Australia. So it's evident that we've come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. You're on mute, Kate.
Thank you. Asmahan, can I ask you would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I agree with Beck. So yeah, for me, like, you know, additional to it's being a day like to celebrate, honor, cheer women around the world for their achievements or their contribution to the society. I think for me, it is also a day that we women like to remind ourselves that we women are strong and hardworking individuals. So for example, we've got Brooke here as an example. A woman can be a mother looking after her child, doing house chores like cleaning, cooking, doing this, doing that, and also can still be like a full-time employee or like, you know, full-time student. So we are clearly, I would say, multitasking humans. And this is approved by science that women, females are multitasking individuals. So we are definitely capable of doing so many great things at the same time. And we certainly have the potential to make better societies, better communities. If we just believe in ourselves, I think we are capable of doing that. So yeah, so for me personally, yes, it is a day to celebrate our achievements, but also like to remind ourselves that we are strong, we can do anything if we just believe in ourselves.
I guess that then links back to what Jordan was saying earlier about, did you say the coup of Facebook has a book all about how women, or strategies to stop women from holding themselves back in their career, to really believe in themselves that they can achieve just as much as their male counterparts. And of course, I guess it helps when you've got a supportive network around you as well, whether that be your family or colleagues or friends, to help you achieve your goals.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm very blessed that to have an extremely supportive husband here with me. He's my only family here, you know, with my 2 little daughters in Australia, and I am so blessed and grateful for their support.
Yeah, that's lovely to hear. Thanks, Asmahan. Okay, so now onto your research specifically. But can you tell us a little bit about your research and how the research that you do could help women to or help empower women to take ownership of their health?
Yeah, so my research at the moment is looking at the vitamin D status of women living in the Illawarra. And by doing this research, we're hoping to come up with strategies to help develop strategies to improve vitamin D in Australia, and also to help contribute to the literature to inform public health policy. By doing this, we're hoping that women can improve their overall health, as vitamin D remains a global health issue. So we get vitamin D from the sun, and we can also get little bits from food and supplements. So in Australia, a lot of people probably don't think vitamin D is such an issue because we're living in a sunny country. But for a range of reasons, vitamin D deficiency is 1 in 4 at the moment, and those levels increase in the winter. So it is still a huge issue. So by empowering women and educating them on what vitamin D is and how much they need, and giving them strategies to do this, we're hoping we can improve health.
And sorry, I may have missed this. Is vitamin D, is it more important for women's health than it is for men's health, or is it equally important?
So we need vitamin D to absorb calcium, and we know we need calcium for good bone health. So it is important for everyone, but it's specifically important for women. As we age, we lose bone, but that's accelerated in women after menopause due to a drop in estrogen. So they have an accelerated bone loss. So by having a good vitamin D status, you're preventing that bone loss.
So you're hoping that through your research into vitamin D, you can then provide information to women on how to increase their intake of vitamin D, and thus preventing issues post-menopause.
Yeah, exactly. So preventing all of those issues related with vitamin D, and they're not just related to bone loss. There's other conditions that vitamin D deficiency is related to.
Okay, thanks, Beck. Asmahan, I believe that you found through your research that a particular condition is more prevalent in women than in men.
Yes, so that's already established by science that depression is more prevalent in women or females more than males. And also, like other mental health problems generally, like they are more common within females. And also, like, you know, women have different vulnerabilities to different physical health problems, and they are more likely to have higher body fat, for example. And we know this is linked to hormonal differences. So previous research, they were just looking at psychological symptoms in depressed people, or psychological variables, and they try to just how to treat those, or like, you know, looking at physical things or medications. But by research, look holistically at the person, so I can see the interactions between psychological and physiological. So the interaction between, for example, hormones, physical health indicators, including body fat, with the psychological symptoms. And this is actually a new approach and a paradigm of understanding holistically is what is going on in women's health with depression, with greater risk of physical health problems, with lower life expectancy, with the disability that goes along with depression. And the hope, hopefully, is treatment can be then tailored to males and females with different presenting hormonal profiles and different risk factors. So with that being said, my research itself, I would say it increases the exposure on in chronic health conditions that affect a lot of females, women, and that might encounter other humans to be interested in their mental health or to talk about their mental health. So meeting people and having this interface between university, science, and community. And we know people often like to talk about their symptoms, as most people, people with depression, don't get treatment for their depression. So they might be feeling quite isolated or feel like there's no support for them. So it has been good for me personally to meet people in the community. I'm talking and meeting women who have these health conditions, and now they are aware that I am researching health issues that are affecting them. So I'm showing that I'm working and looking at underlying causes of health issues, for example, why women are more prone to get depression. So this is, I think, important and might let them feel empowered, as like, you know, their story have been heard, or like now there's support for them. Yeah, and also would like to highlight this, that I am working in multidisciplinary team, and the team is actually like mostly women, which is quite unusual, I would say. Everyone doing the work are females, and I would say finally the inequity in science, you know, has been recognized and challenged, and I'm happy to say that we are one maybe of the few that we are doing it.
Is it a case that, do you think there aren't as many women as men entering science?
I would think so, yeah. Like we still have this inequity between, you know, the gender bias thing. Yeah, and I'm happy that, you know, especially with my research, everyone is doing the work, actually, women.
Really great to hear. Thank you. So now on to the clinical trials that you're all running through at IHMRI. Perhaps, Jordan, can you kick us off? Can you tell us a little bit more? I know you've already touched on what you do, but can you just give us a bit more information on your clinical trial, what it means to you, and how you're hoping that they'll make a difference?
Yeah, of course. So I was born in Nowra, so I've always kind of been local, and I guess chronic kidney disease is a local issue, and it continues to be a local issue. So the Illawarra and Shoalhaven district, if you like, continues to have the highest rates of chronic kidney disease in Australia, with numbers almost double the national average, which sounds outstanding and no one believes me often. But it's, I guess, yeah, very concerning. And I guess the other concern is that chronic kidney disease is an irreversible silent disease. So what that means is that often people don't get symptoms or feel even aware that they have the disease until it reaches more advanced stages. And then at that point, unfortunately, there's often, there's no cure. There's ways to manage it, but there is no cure. So our research is really looking at trying to test two different diets. So what the volunteers would do is they see me as the dietitian, and I give them two diets. Both of them they would require to be followed for 6 weeks with a 4-week washout period, which is just a break in between. And during that time, the volunteers will receive one-on-one dietary consults, food items delivered to their door to support their goals, and also compensation in terms of a voucher if they complete all the assessments. And I guess what I'm hoping this research will do is, I guess, looking into the forgotten organ of the gut microbiota. Hopefully it can open up new avenues for potential treatments, particularly through more preventative measures through, say, more targeted dietary interventions or strategies earlier in the disease, so that we can, I guess, delay the progression or halt the progression of chronic kidney disease, which is very important. And given this catchment area there's such an increased rate, it seems like a great area to be doing this kind of research.
Do we know why the Illawarra Shoalhaven has double the average rates of Australia of kidney disease?
I don't think there's probably particularly one reason. There'd probably be a few. And I guess we do have increased rates of obesity, higher rates of diabetes and hypertension or high blood pressure, which are all, I guess, risk factors. So yeah, I think it's kind of that kind of like combination of all those things.
Yeah. Brooke, can you tell us I know you did touch on your trials, on what your clinical trials are doing earlier. Can you just remind us how your clinical trials are working in IHMRI?
Yeah, sure. So what we're doing is we're providing a continuous glucose monitor, which is a little device that goes in the back of your arm, and it measures blood glucose every 5 minutes for a 14-day period. It doesn't require any finger pricking, so it's simple to use. You just scan your phone or a monitor over the sensor once every 8 hours, and then we get all of that data. So what it does is it gives us a really good indication of what's happening to a person's management of their diabetes over that 14-day period, and then we use that to determine the best time to exercise. And the main outcomes are looking at diabetes management as a whole, which is your HbA1c, which is the gold standard measurement of glycemic control over a period of time. And also another girl that's working on our study, she's looking at the impact of cardiovascular disease. So we know that people who have diabetes are at an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. And we're looking at blood vessel health before and after the intervention to see whether or not by targeting a person's exercise or time to exercise, are we able to reduce risk of cardiovascular disease? Because every time we eat a meal that is high in carbohydrate, whether we have diabetes or not, there is a level of blood vessel dysfunction that comes with that. So if we can reduce our episodes of high blood glucose, then are we in turn reducing cardiovascular disease? So they are prescribed 22 minutes of walking every day for 8 weeks, and they get 5 telehealth conferences with an accredited exercise physiologist, which is in line with the Medicare rebate or Medicare setup, where people who have a chronic condition can access 5 allied health professional visits. And the 22 minutes a day of walking at moderate intensity is in line with the National Physical Activity Guidelines of 150 to 300 minutes of exercise a week. So we're not changing any of the guidelines other than the time of day that we prescribe the exercise.
Thanks, Brooke. Penny has just asked a question here. Is the type of exercise considered in conjunction to exercise time of day of the participants with diabetes or cardiovascular disease?
Yeah, so we're looking at aerobic activity, which is things like walking or cycling, and we would love to investigate type of exercise as well as time of day, but at this stage, because that entails a study that has a whole nother load of arms to it, we're just looking at whether or not prescribing exercise at a particular time is successful in reducing high blood glucose levels over the day, and B, whether or not it would increase adherence to that exercise, and if there's a really simple way of somebody prescribing that exercise in the community or in a community-based setting, rather than, because if a person's best time to exercise, for example, is 10 o'clock at night, it may be great that it reduces their blood glucose or helps them have a more stable blood glucose, but is it realistic, and are they going to do it? So at this point in time, we're only talking about aerobic-based exercise, because most people are able to walk for a period of time unaided by themselves at home whereas with resistance-based exercise, there would be an element of coaching and need to prescribe that in a more clinical way.
Yeah, thanks, Brooke, and thanks for the question, Penny. It's really interesting. So who knows where the research will go once you've tackled the aerobic side.
Yeah, it's unlimited. Just go forever.
That's it. And Beck, can you tell us, I know you're still recruiting, aren't you, for your clinical trial? Can you just remind us what your clinical trial entails?
Yeah, so we're currently recruiting now, and our trials start in June again. So like I've mentioned, we're looking at vitamin D and what factors impact your vitamin D status. So to be eligible for my study, you have to be a woman over the age of 18 and you have to have lived in the Illawarra for at least 6 months. You must be pre or post menopause with no significant health issues and not taking vitamin D supplements or multivitamins. And then involvement in the actual study is easy. So it's just a one-off 2-hour session at the uni where we measure a range of things. So we look at your blood sample, we do a DEXA scan, which looks at your bone density. We take measurements like your weight and your height, and you'll fill in some questionnaires. And then at home, you'll fill in a 4-day food diary, and you'll also wear a little badge that measures your sun exposure. I think Kate is going to send around like a flyer after today's webinar that has my contact details. So if you would like some more information or you'd like to participate, you can contact me there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Beck. And for Brooke, Beck and Jordan, who are still recruiting for their clinical trials, I'll put all the information onto the follow-up email for everyone who is registered, along with the recording of the webinar. So that if you are interested in taking part, you can contact Jordan, Beck, or Brooke as relevant. Asmahan, I know that you've finished your recruitment for your clinical trial. Is it difficult to find recruits for clinical trials in our area?
It was, yes, it was a bit challenging, especially recruiting people with depression. So for example, it took me 2 months to recruit 20 people, and then 2 months to recruit 60 healthy controls. So you can compare. So it's a bit, yeah, so I struggled a little bit to recruit people with depression. And I guess because sometimes the person doesn't come with with terms that they are feeling depressed, or they accept that they're actually feeling these symptoms. So even so we've got these pre-screen questions that I sent through to the potential participants. So even though they think they are fit in the category that they're depressed, but sometimes you just don't accept it. So I would say, yeah, so that was a bit challenging.
Yeah. And how has everybody else found your recruitment so far?
Recruitment in Australia has actually been a lot easier than it was overseas in the United Kingdom. And I think it's mainly because the links, I've got a much bigger link to community here, and also IHMRI has been huge in helping recruit. So they've got a lot of links to media and stuff, which was really helpful in recruiting. So that was a lot easier.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah. That's great to hear. Yeah. Brooke, Jordan, is there anything additional that you'd like to add to that?
We've had a really good, great turnout. People seem to be really willing to be involved, and they get a lot out of the study because they can see how food and exercise and medications and different stress levels actually has a day-to-day impact on their diabetes. So it's interesting for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've just had a completely different experience, just because everyone that's joined the study have been very super interested, and our retention rate, no one's really dropped out, which is amazing. But to get people, especially in light of COVID, so what we had is we started and then COVID hit, and we actually lost a lot of data and a lot of people because we couldn't follow up, and they're also probably the more at-risk group with their condition and with their stage. So there was often a lot of time where we couldn't see them face to face, which was important for the management or the measuring of safety with our clinical trial. And then now they're lost in with the community. So we're just trying to find them. But we are getting ahead a little bit more now. So
that's good to hear. So of course 2020 was a really difficult, challenging year for the majority of us, if not all of us. What are you most looking forward to in 2021? Asmahan, would you like to answer that?
Yes, so yeah, I'll definitely, like, COVID had, a negative impact in terms of data collection, because I was having this idea of, focusing on the measuring body fat in females with, like, in people with depression, and then compared to the healthy controls. Unfortunately, that didn't go on because of COVID, so we couldn't really recruit people, and then so we decided to not go that path. And hopefully after my PhD, so it's still, like, the idea is still there, the potential is still there, like I'm really, like, would love to follow that. So but in terms of this year, I finished up my data collection, so it would be just analyzing this huge data that I've got, and yeah, making a plan and writing and finishing up my thesis.
Yeah, fantastic. And Jordan, you're in a similar situation, I guess, where you are in your PhD.
Yes, I'm excited to finish for 2021. So I'm sure a lot of people are too, but yeah, getting to some kind of normality as well. I know it won't be the same, but just hopefully things start to, become a little bit more predictable, which would be nice.
Yeah, I think it's just the uncertainty for a lot of people that has been the most challenging, never really knowing what's around the corner, which I guess is normal, but it's just been a little bit more heightened over the last 12 months. Yeah. Look, I'm just aware of the time. We do have more questions, but I'll just ask this one question we've received from Teresa. Thank you so much, Teresa, for your question. And she wants to know about your experience at presenting your work, particularly at larger conferences. Have any of you had the opportunity to do that? And if so, how did you find the experience of communicating your science to a wider and, most importantly, a professional audience? Would anyone like to take that question?
I can start and just say that since I started my PhD, it's all sort of been COVID times. So every conference I've presented at, it hasn't been in person, unfortunately. So it's all been pre-recorded, which is a whole different experience, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so not even live webinars like we're doing, just pre-record. That must be really tricky because we had no idea.
Pre-recorded presentations, and then the sort of conference is live, I guess. So
right.
Yeah,
okay.
It's all different, and a lot of them have been overseas because I'm actually going to both the University of Surrey as well. So I go to a lot of European conferences. So they're in the middle of the night, and it's just completely different. So I'm looking forward to going to some Australian conferences.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great. Would anyone like to add anything to that? All good. Okay. So I think in the interest of time, I think we'll wrap up there. I feel like there's a lot more questions that we can ask, and I think you're all just doing incredible work, and work that will positively impact our community once you're finished up and you're able to present your findings, which is really exciting to know that it will have a benefit on the health of our community going forward. So thank you so much to everybody who has dialed in today, and a huge thank you to our panelists. We wouldn't be able to hold webinars like this without you and your support, so thank you so much. To our audience, at the end of the webinar, there is a very short survey, only 3 questions. We'd love it if you could fill this in. IHMRI wants to continue with these webinars, and we want to make sure that we're providing the type of content that you'd like to see. So if it's about a particular disease area or research or clinical area, then please do let us know what you want to hear about. And we've got lots of events coming up, and thankfully with COVID restrictions loosening, hopefully that continues. We'll have some face-to-face events, including an open day, so your chance to come to IHMRI and have a look around our facility and meet some of our researchers, hear more about the clinical trials. So that will be later this year. Subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't already, because all the information about current research, clinical trials, these events that we're planning will be in the bi-monthly newsletter, and you can subscribe to that at ihmri.org.au. As I said, I'll send through a recording of the webinar to everyone who has registered, along with follow-up information from our panelists about their research and about any clinical trials that are ongoing. So if you are eligible, or you'd like to find out if you're eligible to participate, all that information will be on the follow-up email. So once again, a huge thank you to all our panelists. Really appreciate your support, and thank you to everyone for joining. We'll look forward to seeing you at the next IHMRI webinar. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you everyone. Bye-bye.